Welcome to the program. Plenty to talk about as Tennessee prepares for Kentucky. Caleb Calhoun, tell us when to go.
Let's roll.
Represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Welcome to the program. Tuesdays mean John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel, and we'll have some giggles with the Football IQ segment. Caleb said something to me this morning that's a little bit disturbing. We'll get to that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Also, does Nico Iamaleava have to be elite for the Vols to make noise in the college football playoff? And is Jermod McCoy the Vols' best transfer ever? There's a certain guy that shares a last name as me, no relation, that I think would carry that mantle, but Caleb Calhoun has some more thoughts. Also, Tennessee fans, I hate to tell you, but you have to root for Alabama. This day in Tennessee sports history, stat of the day as well. Is Kentucky cursed against the Vols, kind of like Tennessee and Florida? I think there's a comparison to be made there. And Tim Banks, if he decides to be a head coach next year, and I think he's going to have opportunities, we wrote about that. Not saying he's going to leave, but I think he's going to have opportunities. And this was really interesting and kind of puts things in perspective, as this was the 50th anniversary of one of the best hires in all of sports, Pat Summitt. So we'll talk to John Adams about that a little bit later in the program. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing better than the Yankees. Do they know that that's a best of 7?
Well, I mean, they did choke a 3-0 series lead one time. Maybe they just want to have a 3-0 series comeback.
By the way, everybody, I am a Yankees fan. It comes out of left field that they're rerunning that special on Netflix, The Comeback. And I'm just like, oh, come on. Let's get to today's tough question. Let's talk about some winners and not a team that's down.
Well, wait, okay, so there's the Red Sox, Yankees. The Knicks are terrible. The Jets and the Giants are terrible. I feel like they came up with that documentary just to pile on the city of New York. Am I right?
Yes, I do feel. I mean, and it shows up on my, hey, you need to watch this file based off what you've liked in the past. I'm like, I guarantee I never liked anything like that. And I'm only a baseball guy in October. All right. So does Nico Iamaleava need to be Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani for the Vols to make noise in the college football playoffs? It's today's tough question, and it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So I bumped into someone that's kind of making fun of us, Caleb. And they said, well, I'm gonna watch your show. I love your show. Are y'all going to talk about this week's going to be Nico Iamaleava's big breakout game? And I'm like, yes, we have gone down that path a time or two. And I don't know about you, but I feel a little forlorn in doing so. And I'm not going to do so this week, in part because I think that Kentucky's pretty good in pass defense. And I don't think that's how this team is built, for him to go out there and throw for 350 yards right now. That could change. So I just want to ask you this question, and it is the poll question, and that is, does Nico Iamaleava have to be elite for Vols to make noise in the college football playoff? Yes, he has to play better. No, Vols are good enough as is. So far, and I know votes are continuing to come in, it's incredibly one-sided. 100% he has to play better. If you give me those two options, Caleb, I'm going with the latter. I think the Vols are good enough to make noise. Let's define that as win a game in the college football playoff. I think they're good enough to do that as is, the way they are right now.
Okay, well, let's get one thing out of the way, which is that one thing you got wrong, Dave, is he can't beat Aaron Judge in the postseason. We can get that. Okay, since you brought Aaron Judge up.
Yes.
So,
well, I meant the leader, the best player, that like the way Shohei Ohtani is. It is funny that neither of those players, Ohtani because of injury, have really shown up. But anyway.
Yes. I think that Nico Iamaleava is going to have a big moment. I don't know when that big moment's going to be, but there is going to be a moment where they're going to have to put the game in his hands. Look, this isn't anything new. Dave, even the 98 Tennessee team had a moment where T. Martin had to come through. I mean, that Mississippi State, that SEC championship game against Mississippi State, what happened? It was 14-10 late. The defense had not really given up a point all game. They gave up an interception that set up a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. And with 9 minutes left, what happened? Tennessee needed to score. T. Martin took over, threw a touchdown pass to Peerless Price. They get a fumble, throws one to Cedric Wilson, ball game. You don't think that moment's going to come at some point for Nico this season? I mean, it's going to have to.
Here's why I don't. I don't think it has to happen because we'll call it a Heisman moment or a Nico moment. He's not going to win the Heisman. That's not what I'm implying. But you don't have to have that against Kentucky or Vanderbilt necessarily to win those games. And we're not counting what he does against UTEP and to some extent Mississippi State because those teams are just horrible. So, Caleb, I'm not sure that he has to have that. Now, you could argue he would need to have that to beat Georgia. And you've got me there. But I think Tennessee could lose to Georgia, make the college football playoff, win a game with Nico playing slightly above average, which is basically where he is right now.
And I'm going to argue that to make noise in the college football playoff, though, he's going to have a game like that. There are likely 4 games in the playoff Tennessee would have to play if they're going to go win a natty. They're going to run into a game at some point where they would need Nico to make a play. I mean, they just will. Again, I just brought up the 98 team. Dave, I want to point this out. That Mississippi State team was not that good. I don't know if you remember. That's one of the worst teams not one of the worst, but one of the lower end of the teams with winning records they played that year. Honestly.
No, that was not a great team. And let's not forget this. T did not play incredibly great in against Syracuse in 98 because he was limited. But he did have a key run, if you remember, that I believe was on a 4th and 14 that he was
third and 14
that he was able to convert. So he did have to make plays. So I'll give you that. He has to have a moment. If you got that moment to spend, do you want to spend it against Georgia to make sure that you go 11-1 and make the college football playoff and then play in the SEC championship game? Or would you rather that moment happen in a first-round matchup in Neyland Stadium against Penn State?
No, first-round matchup in Neyland Stadium against Penn State. Because you win that first – I've told you guys I'd rather win the first-round matchup. I don't want the bye if I'm Tennessee. I keep telling you guys that. I want the Neyland Stadium home crowd, and then I want to get to play the 4 seed or 3 seed in the second round, which is going to be the Big 12 or ACC champion, because the playoff committee structured this whole thing stupidly. And I think you and I, Dave, both agree. This is the only year they're going to structure it like this, right? Someone's going to game it so badly they're going to be like, we have to fix this.
Yes, I feel like this was a little bit of a hodgepodge that they put together at the last second. Derek brings up a great point. It happened in the Bama game, Dave. He turned on his legs and dialed up a dime in the red zone. So what are the chances this is true. Yeah, what are the chances this is a mute point, as they say in Maynardville?
Mute. Isn't it moot point?
Well, in Maynardville, they say mute.
Oh my
You don't know where
gosh.
Maynardville is. That's way out in the country.
Oh,
Go
well,
ahead.
I know Brad Pitt referenced that in Inglourious Bastards, where that's where he's from.
Yes, that's because I went to the same elementary school as Quentin Tarantino.
Did you really?
I did. He spent a year at South Clinton Elementary School.
Did not know that.
Yes, that's why he makes references to Knoxville in each of his movies. But yes, Maynardville, they say mute. It's not grammatically correct, but that's what they say there. And they have great tomatoes. All right. So, Caleb, is it a moot point? As I'm sorry to all those Maynardville listeners are like, man, Dave's a jerk. Why'd he call us out? It could have been Halls. All right. So, I think it might be a moot point. I think he may have turned the corner. Yet I don't expect him to be Hendon Hooker of 2022, Caleb. If Hendon Hooker was an A+, and we'll talk about Hendon, his career, how it compares to other transfers here momentarily. But if he was an A+, and Nico can be a B+, then I would go ahead and go so far as to say right now, at this very moment, if he plays like he did in the second half against Alabama, which again wasn't perfect, but very good, Tennessee's making the national championship game.
Well, I think he played very, very, very good in the second half against Alabama. So I would agree with you on that. But that would be kind of a breakout performance to play. Like if he plays a full game like he did in the second half against Alabama, then Dave, we're talking about a Nico that has probably 3-4 touchdown passes, 300 and something yards. I mean, he played really well in the second half of that Alabama game.
No,
so,
yeah, I didn't mean to downplay how he played at all. He for the whole game, I think you would agree that was about a B. Or what did you grade it in your report card?
The Alabama game, I think I gave him a B+.
Okay,
so pretty high.
If he's at a B+ level the rest of the year, at that level, Tennessee's in the national championship game. I don't know if they win it. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Caleb, tell me I'm wrong in 30 seconds. Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. BanksandJones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, Caleb, who would you take? Or what would you predict would be Tennessee's finish this season if Nico's not maybe elite, but able to replicate what he did against Alabama? Are you going Final Four? Are you going to just make the playoffs, win a game? Where would you be in that? I'm
pretty comfortable going Final Four in that scenario. I think it's hard to not imagine Nico if they make if he plays like he did in the second half, not making the Final Four. Now, I will say that one of the things that helps Nico in that, and you know this, Dave, you've covered a lot of teams that do this, more than playing well against Alabama, he kind of reset the clock, per se, which is to say that you can't have this sellout defense against Nico and expect him to not to not make you pay for it. It's like, do you remember the Tim Tebow 316-yard game against Pittsburgh that everybody said was like a miraculous game that he played in the playoffs, and they're like, this is proving him play? No, what happened was Pittsburgh put 9 guys in the box and had one-on-one tight coverage on Demaryius Thomas, and then just dared Tebow to beat him that way. And Tebow's like, okay, I can beat you if you make me do that. And that's kind of what they did with Nico in the second half, I felt like. So that resets the clock a little bit, which is good.
That's actually a really... I was wondering where you were going there for a second, but that turned out to be a really good analogy. It was basically, listen, kid, you weren't able to do it against Arkansas. You almost didn't do it against Oklahoma. Yeah, I think Florida, more so Alabama than Florida. Florida refused to go with that 3-3 look nearly as much as I thought they should have. But Alabama clearly wanted to challenge him to win the game, and I thought that was pretty smart. But he did it.
He did it. But but they made it when you challenge him to do it and then he does it, he kind of made it look easy to a certain degree in the process. So because a lot of the plays were just easily there. So now that the clock's reset, you can't just have a sellout defense and go all in on trying to stop Nico in a certain way. That's good news. Tennessee's had a bye to really fix him in a lot of ways. It's hard for me now to say that. But all that being said, if he plays just himself, puts up the production he put against Alabama throughout the rest of the season, yeah, Tennessee can win an Natty. They can definitely go to the Final Four.
Yep. Steven says, need a 16-team playoff and no bye, so every team has to play it out, and injuries and everything makes it an even playing field, and no one gets a week off. I agree with that, but that's where we are right now. And you might see that change as soon as 2026 because the Big Ten and the SEC are getting together and talking as we speak to put together a mega conference. Trust me, that's what is happening. Caleb and I having a discussion in our 3:45 a.m. production meeting this morning, and he threw me for a loop saying that Hendon Hooker is perhaps not the greatest transfer in modern day transfer portal history. What the H? Brought to you by our friends at Double D Piping.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, Caleb, who's the best transfer ever in the transfer portal era? I'm not going back to junior college. I'm not going back to other guys that transferred. I'm just talking about the transfer portal era where you can show up and play right away.
Yeah, and for the record, that also eliminates Alvin Kamara, who while he transferred from Alabama, had to go to junior college before he came to Tennessee. So
yes,
if you came to Tennessee out of junior college, you don't count. So really the most standout one,
it's Hendon Hooker.
Hendon Hooker. Yes, it's Hendon Hooker. Yes, I was about to go there. Okay, to this point, the most productive standout one has been Hendon Hooker. You guys can hate on me, you can push back on me, you can lambaste me all you want. Jermod McCoy is making a really strong case for surpassing Hendon Hooker.
That's hot.
Okay, Hooker, I'm gonna argue your side for a second. What do you call this, steel man or something? I'm
Yeah,
that
when you steel man an argument, you
okay.
prop up.
All right, I'm gonna give you this. I think Jermod McCoy is going to be an all-SEC cornerback for 2 years and perhaps an All-American cornerback next year. I think that Hendon Hooker was, well, I know he was an all-SEC, All-American quarterback for 1 year because the other half of the year that it was split with Milton, he played well, but he didn't play enough to be an all-SEC quarterback, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I thought he should have been. No, I think you really short sell Hendon Hooker that 2021 year. He was really good.
Okay. Well, I'm not trying to knock him. I'm just trying to say you show up on the scene and, McCoy might get left off of some All-American lists because people didn't know him at the beginning of the year. But based off what I've seen in the SEC, he should be on those lists. And I'm sure he's been a part of several award watch lists. Please take a moment, hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. So, but it's hard for me to go against Hooker given that he put Tennessee on the map and the position that he plays. Caleb, quarterback is the most difficult position in sports. He handled that really well with less talent around him. Jermod McCoy has had more.
Okay, now I'm going to make your point for a minute, or Steelman your point, and then I'll go to where I'm going. I agree. The quarterback is more important. You always are supposed to default go to the quarterback. I normally would say not with Heupel because it's Heupel's system, but we're now seeing with Nico, what we saw with Joe Milton last year, that no, Hendon Hooker was legitimately special in his own right as a player. But I still lean to a degree to best relative to your position and who's got a better NFL future. And Dave, I got to be honest with you. Jermod McCoy's going to be a long-time NFL starter. Like 15 years in the league if he stays healthy. And, I mean, Hooker's not going to be a 15-year starter in the NFL. He came out too late. He's not. I don't think you or I think he's a Pro Bowl quarterback.
Well, there's a difference between Pro Bowl and All Pro. I actually think in that offense, he could probably make the Pro Bowl because 8 guys from the NFC turn it down. But All Pro means you're one of the top 4 quarterbacks in the entire NFL. So, I mean, who else would be up for consideration? Because I wanted to make this point as well. I feel like we have been a little bit hard on Josh Heupel when it comes to transfers. We talked about Andre Keurig last year as not coming in, stepping in, and being an all-SEC player from the get-go. Well, he's learned it, and he's very solid there at left guard now. Jacoby Thomas, there wasn't a lot of fanfare with him. He showed up. He's played well. Andre Turrentine's played. Obviously, Brew McCoy has been a fantastic transfer. Injuries have gotten in his way. Same for Keenan Pili. As we take a look at this, don't we have to say that Josh Heupel's done a darn good job in the transfer portal? I feel like the expectations for anybody transferring in are like superstar or he's a bust. I feel like we've got to change our expectations, and probably not just Tennessee fans, all fans of college football. You expect those guys to step in and play right away, but there's probably a reason they weren't playing at their other place. Miles Kitselman is a great example at Alabama. He probably still wouldn't start for Alabama, but he's a great fit for Tennessee. That's an ultra positive pickup in the transfer portal area to me. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. Caleb, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Jermod McCoy is we all knew he would work out because he was coming from Oregon State, and it was very clear he was an elite caliber player. He was bailing because Oregon State was basically getting relegated to Group of 5. He was freshman All-American last year. You see, the reason I'm having a hard time, Dave, is I'm ready to jump here, and you've covered Tennessee longer than I have, but I'm having a hard time thinking a cornerback who's had a greater individual season to this point than Jermod McCoy has in Tennessee history. I've heard of a lot of safeties. I can name safeties. I can't name corners.
Yeah, to me, it goes all the way back to Dwayne Goodrich.
Yeah, I mean, Jamari
surpasses Alontae Taylor right now.
Yeah, he does surpass Alontae Taylor. Would you say Jabari Greer was just a solid corner? Like, he ended up having an NFL career, but at Tennessee, he was just kind of a solid corner, right? Jabari Greer?
Yes, he was told when he could have been really good. He was told when he went to the NFL, forget everything you've learned in college. And Ken, we're aware that Hooker was a Pruitt transfer. We're not necessarily talking about the evaluation. That's part of it in a lot of these guys, but we're talking about the assimilation into the program. Caleb, who else would be in the conversation? We said Hendon Hooker, Jermod McCoy, Brew McCoy.
You got to throw in Brew McCoy. Yeah,
Brew McCoy, no relation. Who else?
Eric is doing. Omar Norman Lott. Omar Norman Lott's been very, very good for Tennessee.
Okay, we'll post that as our poll question. Now, I got a feeling Hendon Hooker is going to run away with it, but prove me wrong because we have the smartest listeners/viewers in the biz. No question about that. And if you're smart, you'll be sure and make sure that your business or your home residence is taken care of when it comes to fire safety. Brought to you by Double D Fire Protection Services.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
All right, Caleb, we hope to be joined by Keenan Pili before the end of the week. If not for the injuries, I would actually probably have him above McCoy. And I'm as high on McCoy as you. Also, Tony Vitello will join us tomorrow. Looking forward to that. So, Caleb, where would Pili be in this conversation if he's healthy the entire time?
Yeah, I still wouldn't have him above McCoy, and that's no shot on Keenan Pili. I mean, again, I'm saying the best season a cornerback's ever had in Tennessee history. Even before Pili got hurt, I don't think we thought Keenan Pili was having the best season a linebacker ever had in Tennessee football history. I mean, that's an impossible task. I couldn't put that, like, was it better than Gerard Mayo, Kevin Burnett, Al Wilson? I mean, Jermod McCoy, guys, Tennessee, look at how Tim Banks schemes. And this all comes down to that Will Brooks interception. he leaves one side of the field just alone because he knows Jermod McCoy's got it locked down. I haven't seen a cornerback do that at Tennessee. And by the way, you know what's funny about it, Dave? The rest of the SEC is shocked by it because you notice they still keep testing McCoy too.
Yeah, they do. I believe that comes down to quarterback play. I think that in college, it's tougher to throw away from a guy because your quarterback can make bad reads at times. I think that in the NFL, if you tell a guy, hey, that's Deion Sanders over there, do not throw his way, that he's not going to do that. I think that's a lot about quarterback play. Agree or disagree?
No, I agree with you on that. I think quarterback play is a big part of it. So that's a decent point. But either way, I do think people are shocked by how good he is. Look, I've seen Tennessee change up its defensive schemes. I think the coaches are a little shocked by how good he is. And that's not their fault. There are plays cornerbacks make in games, Dave, that you really can't simulate in practice at all, right? You really just have to see how they react. I mean,
especially not in today's practice where they don't practice very physical. They probably didn't have a great idea that he was going to be as physical as he was when it comes to taking down ball carriers, when it comes to intimidating the Ryan Williams of the world into wearing orange fingernail paint.
And also just the things like jumping in front of players to bat balls down without getting a hand on them, which he does better than anybody I've ever seen. Usually, Dave, I mean, aren't you kind of coach like maybe try to wrap your left hand around the waist and see if you can avoid getting caught with that? He doesn't touch him. I mean, he's really good at that.
No, and nobody touches the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. We appreciate the support. Hooked for 10% off. Caleb, where does our poll question stand right now? We might just have to take Hendon Hooker off the list.
Yeah, because we're asking guys who is the greatest transfer portal player to Tennessee, and Hendon Hooker is collecting 86%, Jermod McCoy 11%, Brew McCoy 4%, Omar Norman Lott 0%.
Let's do this. Let's reset the thing and leave Hendon Hooker out of that. How about that? How about we do that? And the other thing that somebody in the chat brought up, and that was Hendon Hooker's leadership was a key part of his was a key component to him being an elite player. Caleb, you don't ask your cornerbacks to do that most often. No, you don't. You don't, and that's actually a big difference with Hendon Hooker. You do need your quarterbacks to do it. We just talked last week about that's what's so special about Dylan Sampson. But you know, again, I get what you guys are all saying. I do, and I mean, if I had to take one person back right now, yeah, I'm probably taking back Hendon Hooker because Nico hasn't lived up to what I thought he'd be. Like, if I'm like, if I have to trade Hendon Hooker for Jermod McCoy and I'm Tennessee, I'm doing that in a New York minute. But at the same time, I still make the case that one, Jermod McCoy's just a redshirt sophomore, so he's going to be at Tennessee for another couple of years, or maybe at least one more. So I don't really think that this is. I'm not so sure this is over yet. And also Tennessee is showing, Dave, that they have unconventional leaders. I mean, look at Dylan Sampson this year. That's pretty impressive what he's doing. No, and I think that, you know, we had somebody question this topic. I think that everybody wants to fixate on Lance Hurd as being a transfer bust. And I have to remind everybody that, guys, he's a redshirt freshman and he's playing with an ankle injury. I think some people have been, it's what I wanted to eventually get to. As a whole, where would you judge Josh Heupel and what he did with Hendon Hooker? I realized the overlap there that he was recruited by Pruitt or brought in by Pruitt, but how would you judge Tennessee as a whole and how they've handled transfers in the transfer era? I mean, to me, I may be missing a guy or two, but it's an A. It's an easy A minus at worst. And no, I don't think Hurd's a bust either, Lance. I didn't mean that. Other people were saying. Go ahead.
I'm not as high on Heupel in the transfer portal yet. I need to see a little bit more. I mean, again, he nixed a transfer that was handed to him in Hendon Hooker so he could go out and get his own in Joe Milton. That's still one of the greatest fails, like original sins that you could imagine.
Okay, so you blame him for just bringing Joe Milton in, because that's two different things. Going out to get Joe Milton, which I can't blame you. I mean, that's a Porsche 911 when you look at that from an offensive coach's standpoint. I mean, that to me, I can't knock him on that when I see that guy. And I don't know that Hendon Hooker's an elite leader. Now, we could certainly debate, and you have very vociferously, that there should have been no competition between the two. And I'll give you that.
Hey, Dave, but think about it this way. You keep saying it's the Porsche 911, but how about it this way? You're taking your son to buy his first car when he's a 16-year-old and he wants to learn to drive. You're not getting the Porsche 911. Not at all. I mean, there's no way in hell you're giving him that, because you're like, no, he's good. Not only will it cost you money if he wrecks it, he's putting himself at risk also, right? You're like, I think the Jeep Grand Cherokee is a safer car, right? Or is it like you want to
actually what he has? Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Did I nail it?
Very strange. All right, here we go. This day in, do we want to do this day in Tennessee football history right now, Caleb Calhoun?
Yeah, sure. We'll throw that out there.
All right, this day in Tennessee football history, and that's brought to you by our friends at Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Caleb, what do you got?
Yeah, so on this day in 1932. Yes, I'm going all the way back to 1932.
Interesting.
Tennessee secured the highlight of its season under General Robert Neyland, in which they beat Duke. Yes, Duke. 16-13 in a thriller in front of 13,000 fans at Shields Watkins Field that day. They won 16-13, which propelled them to the Southern Conference Co-Championship. It would end up being their second conference title under Robert Neyland during his first stint as head coach of Tennessee, before the golden age of the Neyland years. And it was their fourth conference title ever in school history.
Yep. Great take from TN Junior. Brew is so important for the offense and what they do. Defense is more unit play. I would agree with that. Where are they without Brew McCoy's leadership in the offseason leading into the season? All right, coming up on the program.
And no, I'm not getting Quincy a Porsche, Adam. Sorry, not happening.
By the way, it's Porsche, everybody. The same way it's not Neyland. It's the way a man pronounces his name. I can't say Caleb Calhoun, because that's not how he pronounces it. It's not debatable. It's Porsche.
Quick question, Dave, and maybe we should think about this over the break. What is the car that, like, when you see someone driving it, what's the peak car of, like, it's like they're clearly trying to let you know they have a car, and they're trying to make you know
it's definitely the new Tesla SUV.
Oh, that Tesla Armor SUV thing?
There's one that rolls around in my neighborhood. But then I saw it actually tow a Porsche 911 and beat it 0-60 in a drag race. It towed a Porsche 911 and outran a Porsche 911 at a quarter mile. And I saw that on the. Think about that for a second. It's towing the other vehicle that it's racing against. Did I do a good job of describing it?
No. I see what you're saying.
It makes me kind of want one, because that's fast. Now, I'll look like a dork, but.
And if you hit something, you could cause some serious damage at that point.
The whole thing could explode, is my understanding. Hit that like and subscribe. Keep them coming. If you want to contribute to Quincy Calhoun's college/Porsche fund, you can do so. And all you have to do.
It's not going to be a Porsche fund, guys. And yes, it will not be.
Nah, probably be, I would imagine, a Lincoln or a Ford coming news down the road. All right. So, and then Derek says, go find the Knox News article titled Hendon Hooker. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now, are we debating this?
There's a debate over whether or not Jeremy Pruitt deserves credit for Hendon Hooker. Guys, he deserves credit.
Yeah. He's not a total buffoon.
Jeremy Pruitt's an amazing talent evaluator. I would trust, if I needed a GM tomorrow, I would hire Jeremy Pruitt over Josh Heupel as a GM.
Hey, when's his show cause up?
Oh, in like 6 years. I don't know. It was like
okay, fine. Figure that in like 6 years. When the sun begins to expand into the third planet. Do this for me. Find out when his show cause is, because I think you need to be a little bit concerned about Tim Banks. So maybe Tennessee could go the Jeremy Pruitt route. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. John Adams coming up on the program. He will be brought to you by our friends at Neubert Collision Center. As Caleb, remind you that Neubert Collision Center is fantastic. They have been in Knoxville for just ever since I can remember, for over 50 years. As a matter of fact, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. The show represented by Banks and Jones. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Stat of the day coming up. John Adams coming up. Is Kentucky cursed against the Vols? Or has Tennessee just been that much better? Where could Tim Banks end up as a head coach next year? I think he's going to have some options. And then the 50th anniversary of the Pat Summitt hire that changed the sport. I mean, in my lifetime, 50 years, 74 is when I was born. What hire has most changed a sport other than Pat Summitt? I mean, I would start getting into the Roy Kramers of the world and what he did for college football. I would get into Pete Rozelle and how he got the NFL on television and with great television contracts. Maybe David Stern with how he cleaned up the NBA that was considered a drug thug league in the 70s. I mean, what is women's basketball without Pat Summitt? Caleb, it's not mainstream sports now. I can promise you that.
No, not at all. And for those who don't know, Pat Summitt got a couple of chances to coach the men. Now, Dave, maybe you were around when one of those when Tennessee was entertained. Were you covering Tennessee when they were serious about one of those hires? Because I know they tried a couple of times.
You know, I didn't know that they were ever really serious because I don't think she was up for it. Not that she didn't appreciate the challenge, but I think there was concern and I think she viewed it as, I have an equal job. I have as good of a job.
Well, no, the way I read she viewed it was she felt that as great as it could have been for her to be the first woman to coach men's basketball, she felt she had a role to help build up women's basketball and not leave it high and dry. And that's the vibe I got from it, which is
I don't think she had any desire. It's like, you know, I mean, I don't think she had any desire. It's like if ESPN called me now. I'm good. I'm happy where I am. I just don't think I think she looked at that as a lateral move, Caleb. Now, would it have afforded her an opportunity to do something that would have changed the way women were viewed in athletics? Yes. But you're right. It wouldn't have helped women's basketball anymore. She already did the lion's share of that.
Yeah, it would have helped her and her legacy in men's basketball, but it wouldn't have helped the women's game as a whole for her to do that. And then there was always questions if she would have been successful. Guys, the Pat Summitt name would have recruited. Because Pat Summitt had a lot, just so y'all know, and Dave, you know this, particularly in the state of Tennessee, where a lot of the recruiting happens. At the high school women's basketball, at the high school level, schools with elite women's programs typically have elite men's programs. Is that fair to say? They're usually one and the same. Pat Summitt's already got all those high school connections if she goes to the men's side. You don't think she can easily recruit those kids too?
That's a good point. Do I think there would be a handful that would immediately say, I ain't playing for a woman? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but you can overcome that with kids that would play for a woman, though.
Oh, totally agree. Totally agree. No, I think there would be some sexism in there because it's a new thing, but there was all kinds of isms previously in our country's history.
What do you think of Lansing Bill Walsh with his West Coast offense changing the pro game?
I think that's pretty good. I think that's actually a really good one. And it coincided with the NFL being more heavily at Tennessee, or I'm sorry, on TV. I would offer this one as well. How about Paul Bear Bryant and what he did for the SEC?
I don't think Bear Bryant did that much for the SEC, though. I think that's really overblown. He was an amazing coach. He dominated in the SEC, but how did he change the SEC? He gets credit for integrating the SEC. No, he was riding a wave that was already happening.
Yeah, I never thought he got credit for that.
Yeah, he gets credit for because of the whole Sam Cunningham game. For those who don't know, Alabama wouldn't recruit black players, so Bear Bryant purposely scheduled a game against USC, who had Sam Cunningham, who he wanted to recruit, and they wouldn't let him recruit. And many people think he threw that game and let Sam Cunningham just torch Alabama that day because he wanted to make the case that we got to get black players.
By the way, position available, because I don't have the time to do it. Caleb knows so much about history and sports history that we're going to hire a fact checker. And I think that fact checker is going to be pretty disappointed that they're not correcting Caleb a lot. Because there have been a couple times where I've gone back and looked and I've been like, damn, that's pretty good, Caleb. All right, so that was pretty
Steven,
good.
you're wrong. He did not make Alabama a household name either. Alabama had already won multiple titles with Wallace Wade and Frank Thomas. They were already a household name in the SEC. Trust me.
Ouch. Well, he did this, though. He made drinking and smoking a fundamental basis of college football.
He was the first coach to ever do that.
I have heard stories about how he would smoke a cigarette under the goalpost watching his team warm up. To me, that is just...
Well, that was kind of intimidating. I read a lot of that it was kind of to set up Bear Bryant wanted to have an intimidating godlike figure when he approach his players, so he would do certain things just to intimidate them.
All right. So that leads us to this, and I didn't even necessarily mean to do this, but let's go ahead and dig into it right now. Are you up for rooting for Alabama, Tennessee fans? Because that's what you need to do. And why, Caleb Calhoun? Why does Tennessee need to root for Alabama?
Guys, Tennessee at this moment has one quality win on their resume, and it's Alabama. And unless they beat Georgia, another one's not coming. I don't care what happens with Vanderbilt the rest of the year. By the way, Vanderbilt's not going to finish with more than 7 wins. That's not going to be a quality win if you beat them in Nashville. Sorry, it's not. Their only quality win at this point is going to be Alabama. They need Alabama to finish at least in the top 20 to really make a case for the College Football Playoff Committee. Because if they go 10-2, say Alabama, the wheels come off. Say they lose to LSU and then they just quit on the season and go and finish 7-5. Tennessee won't have a win against a quality opponent at all this year if they don't beat Georgia. How do you justify putting them in the playoff at 10-2 if there's a hodgepodge of 10-2 teams?
Yeah, you're right, but no, I can't do that. Can't root for Alabama.
Yes, you can.
No, and Tennessee fans can't do that. That's not doable.
Yes, you can.
No.
Yes, you can.
No,
you absolutely can.
No,
guys.
No.
Guys, this is I'll say this too, and I know people who do this. This is loser fandom is what we call it. Is when you root against your rival to the detriment of your own team.
Okay. How many times are Tennessee and Alabama going to recruit against each other? A lot is the answer. Okay. Now, are you
Dave,
rooting?
You don't sacrifice the season itself for recruiting. You don't.
Recruiting's a 4 or 5 year cycle. You're talking about 1 year.
But you don't this 1 year you don't sacrifice what you want, what you can do in a season. You don't sacrifice making the playoff for recruiting. You never do that. That's not something you do. If you have a chance to win a national title, you don't sacrifice that. That's like in the NFL, Dave. I know you're a Cowboy fan, but so I'm going to throw them out because you actually would say yes, they should do this. So I'm not going to count them. If you're in the NFL and a regular team is playing for a spot in the playoffs, would you say, well, I want them to lose this game so that they can get that higher draft pick? Let me tell you about that. No, you play for the playoff spot.
Way different. That is one player, and you're not getting that high of a draft pick, and it's not going to affect it that much. If the wheels come off at Alabama, you could easily haul in 8 to 10 high-level recruits over the next 3 or 4 years that you wouldn't have gotten if they were still relevant. I think you forget when Alabama was completely irrelevant, and Georgia, I'll throw in there as well, had a Dodo Bird as a head coach, which they don't now. But when that was the case, when Alabama was irrelevant, Tennessee was at its best.
Yes, but Tennessee can still be great. And you don't sacrifice a playoff season on behalf of this. You don't. On the potential of one, we don't know that Alabama will be completely irrelevant long term. Let me engage you in the recruiting thing for a minute, which I can't believe I'm doing because I've never been one. You don't sacrifice a playoff team that has the defense that could win you a national championship. Dave's saying, I don't want to win a national championship. That could hurt me in recruiting, guys.
Say that. Justin, thank you. Said I will never root for Alabama no matter what the circumstances are. You're a fine American, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ridiculous. Guys, okay. You don't sacrifice a national title for recruiting purposes down the road. You take the championship. And the championship's on the line if you can make the playoff. You want to make the playoff, okay? Now, to engage your recruiting point for a minute, Dave, what makes you think that just because they're bad this year that they are going to fall off the rails? What happens if Calhoun DeBoer gets his next Michael Penix Jr. coming in? And all of a sudden they're back to dominant next year. It ain't like Georgia's going anywhere anyway.
Okay.
So, yeah. Now, here's what you could say. And here's what you should have said, because it's all about the confines of the season itself. You sacrifice things for recruiting, you always get burned. Ole Miss fired David Cutcliffe because he couldn't recruit. But, Ed Orgeron was a great recruiter, and yeah, he was such a better coach than David Cutcliffe. Let me tell you about it, okay? Florida fired Dan Mullen because he couldn't recruit. Man, things are going so well right now under Billy Napier, okay? Steve... You know the difference between Ron Zook and Steve Spurrier. Ron Zook was a much better recruiter than Steve Spurrier, and it really showed up on the field with Ron Zook and Zook ball. Okay, so I'm sorry. And I'm someone who's covered recruiting, not to your extent, but I have. Recruiting recruits itself. Schools recruit themselves most of the time. That's just a fact. The biggest thing that recruits is the success you have as a program. Making the college football playoff recruits better for you than other schools being down in the NIL era. So now that I have engaged your recruiting talk, your philosophy that you should hope to be worse so you could recruit better down the road, okay, I will give you a point. There's an argument that you should root for LSU over Alabama in 2 weeks. And it's this reason. If you have faith that Tennessee can beat Georgia, because as Dave pointed out yesterday, the dream scenario for Tennessee is to win out and not play for the SEC title. That is a golden scenario. Because the truth is, if Alabama beats LSU, Dave, and Tennessee wins out, they're going to the SEC title. They can't avoid it.
Okay, James trumped me. My emotions still say you just can't root for Alabama, but he said winning a natty recruits. Yeah, that's probably true. If Tennessee wins a national championship, they're probably going to win their fair share of recruiting wars against Alabama. Caleb, give me 30 seconds as it's open enrollment for Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Caleb, finish your point, sir. Look at you sitting back all Hugh Hefner style.
Okay.
What do you need, like one of the cigarette extender things and a robe?
I got a few examples of this when Tennessee had to root for rivals. And you know what? They did the mature, responsible, reasonable thing. So one of those moments was 1997. I don't know if you guys know this history or not. Maybe you do. You know Tennessee lost to Florida that year, right? Peyton Manning's last year, Dave.
Yes.
Late in the year, Florida had lost 2 games. So Tennessee wins the East, and they're going to go play for the SEC title. It's the Bowl Alliance. So excluding the Pac-10 and Big Ten, there's still a national championship game. Heading into the last week of the season, Florida State and Nebraska are undefeated. If one of them loses, Tennessee gets to go to the national championship game. Guess what Tennessee had to do? They had to root for Florida to beat Florida State. And guess what happened? Florida beat Florida State in what was one of arguably the finest regular season games Steve Spurrier ever coached, where he alternated the quarterbacks back to back and they beat Florida State. And
I remember watching that game in the middle of it thinking it's finally going to blow up for the great offensive guru of my generation. I thought that he's going quarterback to quarterback. In the first quarter, I was thinking this is where it blows up in his face. That was perhaps his greatest coaching day ever. You're right.
It was, and it worked. It worked flawlessly. And so they
watched Tom Landry do the same thing in the mid '80s. It didn't go well.
Because Tom Landry thought he was a genius.
Tom Landry was a defensive coach, but that's not an argument.
He thought he was God's coach for real. And
okay. Well, he may have been. Who is harder to root for Tennessee's fan base, Alabama or Florida? Right now, it's 50-50, right down the middle. Vote now and give me your comments as to why one is harder to root for over the other. I'll sum it up right now. It, to me, is as clear as this. Florida is still, and Caleb, probably not to you because you're younger, but it's still nouveau riche to me. They don't have the history of an Alabama or a Tennessee or a Georgia or all those teams that, to me, have more tradition. They languished and floundered about throughout the 80s before they got lucky and hired a guy named Steve Spurrier, or they probably still would have 0 championships. So I'm sorry. You're not a real member of the party right now.
Well, here's why the hatred runs really deep. Not only are they nouveau riche in that way, but also like they got good because of all the historic migration to Florida starting in the 50s with the invention of air conditioning. So there's a lot of Florida that just doesn't feel South culturally. You know what I mean? So it feels like a non-Southern school culturally.
Let's just be honest. When you cross the border, it feels like you've gone to a different country. People talk about going to Dominica and Belarus and all these places. I'm like, just go to Florida.
It feels crazy. It feels like USC is dominating the SEC when Florida dominates the SEC, doesn't it? It feels like a Southern California school is dominating the SEC.
Yes. But we know under Lincoln Riley that Southern California is never going to dominate anything.
No, they will not. They will not. And so, yeah, no, we would So and also it didn't help that which is hilarious when you think about it, because how did the program get built? Under Steve Spurrier, the most Southern-sounding head coach of all time, okay? The Neubert non-Southern school, Dave, had the coach with the second most Southern accent in SEC history. I mean, Ed Orgeron's got the most Southern accent, but would you say Steve Spurrier is number 2?
Yeah.
In terms of thick accents?
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good.
And and yet somehow they're not seen as like the old traditional Southern football program. They're seen as, like you said, Nouveau Riche, not even New South though, like barely even South, and just dominating the SEC with a system, with the style of play under Steve Spurrier that just literally said, hey, SEC, you know that stuff y'all valued for 100 years? Yeah, none of that matters. That's basically what Spurrier said to them, isn't it?
Pretty much. Steve Spurrier definitely is one that when we talk about changing the game, I think he changed the game for Florida, not to the extent of which Pat Summitt changed it for the Lady Vols. But we'll talk to John Adams again, the 50th anniversary since Pat Summitt was hired at Tennessee. And my, oh my, what a legacy she left. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It is time for the stat of the day. Caleb, as the stat of the day is brought to you by our fantastic friends at Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration, peakivhydration.com. Check them out. Caleb, what do we got as far as our stat of the day?
Yeah, so our stat of the day is kind of an interesting one, but it's kind of a funny one because it just shows Tennessee's dominance over Kentucky, which we're going to get to soon. Tennessee's longest streak of scoring over 50 points against one school was Kentucky. From 1996 to 2000, they scored over 50 against Kentucky every single year. And from
That's
97
a mean stat of the day, Caleb.
From 97 to 99, Kentucky was their highest scoring opponent. That was the Hal Mummy year. So, of course, they were going to drop 50 because Hal Mummy was like, well, I'll still drop 30 on you guys. So,
And then we have an odd question from G. White out of left field. Is Lou Holtz still alive? Efforting. We'll find out the answer to that question and more with John Adams coming up next. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Don't forget about our friends at Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Right down below. Stop by and tell Bo that Dave and Off the Hook Sports said, hey, Bo, QualityTirePros.com. 2 minutes. John Adams, Knoxville News Sentinel, digging into Kentucky and their mental hurdle with Tennessee. Is it as strong as the Vols against Florida? I think it's actually stronger. Stay tuned. More after this.
before break,
Yes.
can you say hey, Bo, in the way Lou Holtz would say hey, Bo?
Hello. I think I've lost that to some extent. I used to always be able to do Alec Baldwin. Maybe I'll start working on those. But my Alec Baldwin is pretty good. Are you closing? Coffee's for closers. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker doing bad impressions off the Hook Sports.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, 4th down.
All right, Coop, thanks for bringing us back. Here we go.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Tony Botello to join us tomorrow on the program. We look forward to that. And when it comes to great guests, there's nobody bigger than John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. His appearance is brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. His camera is brought to you by the always adjusting John Adams, columnist of the Knoxville News Sentinel. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for asking.
Okay, you look great. You're. I think that's some buffering going on there. Can you say something to me again?
What? Yeah. Thanks for asking how I'm doing, Dave. I really appreciate your caring. Not everybody.
There
cares.
you go. All right, I do, and so I'll ask you this question before we get up and rolling, as now your connection's good. Who is harder for Tennessee fans to root for, Alabama or Florida? Because theoretically, according to Caleb, who's got a little bit of Benedict Arnold in him, Tennessee fans should root for both teams.
It depends on the age. Older fans have a hard time rooting for Alabama. Younger fans have a hard time rooting for Florida. I think it's an age deal.
Okay. All right, let's get off and rolling here if we can. As is Kentucky, anything you wanted to add to that, Caleb? You started to say something, but I think your mic was muted.
Yeah, I was saying for this year, I was saying they have to root for both, John, because Tennessee in a college football playoff that's wide open needs every bit of quality wins they can get. And, you know, they if Tennessee fans would rather miss the college football playoff than see Alabama do well, that's a very loser mentality. I'm just going to say it.
Some might feel that way. Yeah, you're right. It does get pretty complicated when you start trying to figure out whom to root for. And also you have to look beyond the SEC boundaries and look all over the country. I mean, there are games going on that fans, if they're really knowledgeable and really into this stuff, they'll be pulling in for and against certain teams.
Which makes the regular season better, even though Caleb didn't think it would. John, is Kentucky cursed against the Vols, or has Tennessee been that much better as we get things started with you? Tennessee's been pretty bad recently before Josh Heupel showed up. So what's your initial reaction? Is Kentucky just cursed against the Vols, or has Tennessee been that much better?
No, I don't believe in curses, and I also don't believe Tennessee has always been that much better. Sometimes these things just happen in sports. I mean, Florida's been bad at times and still able to beat Tennessee, had horrible coaches at times, still able to beat Tennessee. Kentucky, a number of times since I've been here, let's see this, it's 36 of 39 Tennessee has won.
Yeah.
So I've been here for most of those. There were times where Kentucky had the better team. Not many times, but sometimes it did. And it would just botch a field goal, have a boneheaded play call, which would have made Caleb's dumb coaching decisions list. Could go back and get a whole collection of Kentucky. I mean, look at some of the coaches. I mean, they had a coach named Joker. How do you expect that's going?
They also had how Mummy go for it on his own end and 4th down.
Well,
Whoops, Josh Heupel did that.
Yeah, he did. He brought back the spirit of Al Mummy. Tennessee fans who remember those days cringed in unison. Yeah, I think with Kentucky, it's one thing fans don't. When you think about easy games in Tennessee, there's always Vanderbilt. It's so great for Tennessee to have Vanderbilt as an in-state rival. But in fact, in the time I've been here since '87, Vanderbilt has actually beaten Tennessee, I think, 6 times, 2 times more than Kentucky has. So everybody looks at Vanderbilt as a pushover game. But Kentucky is really, I wrote a column on this. I don't think all Tennessee fans appreciate how much Kentucky's done for Tennessee football. It's done a lot.
Yeah, so go ahead, Caleb. I think John's buffering again, but your thoughts on what Kentucky's done to prop up Tennessee even in the bad years.
Well, John, I've said, look, I mean, the Tennessee's record against Kentucky doesn't match the disparity. Not that Tennessee hasn't been better than Kentucky. They have been better than Kentucky. But they haven't been that much better than Kentucky related to the actual records. And you're right, some of it's play calling. I want to know your thoughts. So I also think some of it's psychological. And I said this with Tennessee, Florida, too. And I actually think this applied to Tennessee, Alabama in the late 80s, early 90s, when I thought more times than not Tennessee had the better team but would lose. Which is, I think the campus culture infects the players. So they start to feel their mistakes get more magnified in these type of games. So Tennessee feels the pressure when they face Florida. Kentucky feels it when they face Tennessee. And I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a possibility because the players weren't here for all those losses, obviously. But we had players, Dave remembers this, there were players, Tennessee players, who talk about how the coaches tightened up during the Florida week. And, of course, that spreads throughout the team. They pick up on these things. They take the cue from their coaches. Kentucky, as far as on campus, I mean, I still wonder with Kentucky, I mean, it's more of a basketball school. And let's face it. I don't know if the players are as conscious based on what they get from fellow students, the fans, about how the rivalry has gone. Because it's not as though Kentucky's been contending for championships. At least in its better years, Tennessee and Florida both contended for championships and sometimes won them. So I don't know if it's as much of a factor, but it could be. I don't rule that out, but it's happened a lot of times. I always think of this. Rich Brooks, who was a good coach at Kentucky, you get down to the 1 yard line, it was inside the 5, and he kicked a field goal, I think, to send it into overtime. Well, you're Kentucky. You're not supposed to beat Tennessee. So you got a yard or two, go for it. I mean, you're going to have a better chance of making that than you would, say, winning in overtime. So I think that might be a factor, sure.
John, portions of the program brought to you by the UPS Store Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services locally owned and operated. The link right down below, operated by Tennessee ball fans as well. John, I go back to the Tennessee-Florida series when I do think it was mental for the Vols. And I think they heard about it going to class. I don't know really that players have to go to class anymore, so that might not be a factor. But
you're saying they went to class. You're saying they went to class back then?
Well, they were supposed to. I don't know nowadays if it's nearly as important.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I mean, when I hear of players spending 16 hours or 14 hours or 12 hours in the facility, it makes you wonder what's happening at Geology 101.
Yeah.
I mean,
that would be Geology 1, not 101. Go ahead.
That's right. Rock, not a rock. All right. So, John,
Stone.
All right. By the way, brought to you by the Hemp House, hemphousechat.com. John, so with the Tennessee-Florida series, how many times did you think that Tennessee legitimately had the better team? Because I thought that was overblown in a lot of different times.
Yeah, there were times. I thought though in 97 and 99 when Tennessee lost to Florida, those were big games back then. Those were good teams challenging for championships. And you look at the 98 team when Tennessee won, I thought Tennessee, you could make a case that Florida was the better team on that night. They piled up yardage, just kept shooting themselves in the foot, fumbled, all that kind of stuff. But I thought the 97 and 99 teams, as talented as they were for Tennessee, could have won in the swamp very easily, and they didn't. I think that was a factor, the psychology of it. That's the thing about psychology, to me, factored more into that series than it did Tennessee and Kentucky, because often so much was at stake when Tennessee played Florida back in the 90s. So, yeah, you're going to hear so much about that game because it wasn't just losing a game. It was often losing a shot at a championship, maybe even a national title. So I think the psychology that you guys are talking about mattered more then.
All right, John, I want you to comment on something real quick because I am going to give a quick history lesson on the insanity of the Tennessee-Kentucky series real quick. And I just want to get your thoughts on if this makes you think it's a curse or psychological. Because you've covered two games where Kentucky may have had the better team and Tennessee won. There was 2021 where Tennessee beat Kentucky in Lexington 45-42, Heupel's first year. And then there was 2018 where Jeremy Pruitt's team inexplicably blew out Kentucky when they were horrible the rest of the year. But back in the 40s when Bear Bryant was at Kentucky, he regularly had better teams than Tennessee and Robert Neyland. And Tennessee would always beat them. The most notable one was 1950, which Kentucky claims a national championship for that year. They were undefeated. They were going to Knoxville to play a Tennessee team that everybody agreed was significantly worse that year. Everybody knew Kentucky would win. The week of the game, the Great Appalachian Storm of 1950 hits, the worst snowstorm in the history of East Tennessee. And Tennessee fans smartly decide, we're not going to, and the university decides not to shovel Neyland Stadium for the game because they want the snow to impact the game. There were 21 fumbles in that game, and Tennessee beats Kentucky 7-0 in the ugliest win. Is that not a bit of a curse at that point that the snow just happens to fall that week when Kentucky is supposed to beat Tennessee?
I thought you were going to say 21 people died or something, like it was a massive snowstorm. And yeah, man, that was a bleak picture, Caleb. You lost me with that. I know you're delving into history, making it about football. I'm thinking snowstorm. People can't get food. They can't escape. Oh, well. No,
John,
I still don't believe in that game. Huh?
Did you cover that game?
No, I was a student back then.
I do think that
I was throwing snowballs at fans going to the game. You idiot!
Yes.
Catch this.
Did they cancel class, Caleb? That's the question I have for you because of that snowstorm.
I don't know if they canceled class, but I know that the university purposely decided to not clear off the field because they knew Kentucky had such a significantly better team. They felt their only chance was if a massive snowstorm could help. The same way, by the way, that Tennessee was able to beat Florida because of a torrential downpour in 1992. So
it was a glorious day for Dave.
Nobody's life was threatened by that downpour, though. So that's good. Caleb, did you ever think about being a college professor? Was that ever one of your life goals?
No, I've been that's been suggested, but I just never. I don't have.
You kind of have that professorial look about you, and you
bring
a lot of history.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you about the one time that weather did actually cause a fatality on Tennessee's campus. How about that with John Adams and Dave Hooker? By the way, John, if you have any Medicare needs, Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
I know everybody's been waiting for this, so hit the like and subscribe button. John, do you know why the University of Tennessee didn't cancel classes due to snow until 1993, which happened to be on my birthday when the blizzard of 93 hit and nobody could come see me in my dorm room? Do you know why? They hadn't canceled classes since the mid-70s. Do you want to guess why?
I have no idea, Dave, but I assume you're going to enlighten me.
I am. And here's exactly what happened. So driving down Cumberland, students are throwing, and somebody can look this up if you want to, put a link in the chat box. But you've got people, you got students having a good time, classes off, we're throwing snowballs at cars, and somebody threw one at a truck and it went in the window, and the trucker got out and shot the kid right in the middle of the Cumberland Avenue.
This show you do, Dave, I mean, does it always take such a dark turn?
Not usually, it does not.
Geez.
John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Should Tennessee be worried about losing defensive coordinator Tim Banks? The man who first brought that up is on the air with us now. 4 Downs, and it's brought to you by our fantastic friends at Commercial Bank.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, John, I think that Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, is going to be ripe for the picking after this year. I think that he has done a fantastic job, and I noted some of the stats and what he inherited and what he has turned Tennessee's defense into, and that is elite. How concerned should Tennessee fans be about losing Banks?
Well, they certainly could be concerned. I mean, if he wants to, I don't know what his aspirations are. He's got a pretty good gig going right now as a coordinators make a lot of money now. And some of those guys don't want to be head coaches. He's a veteran coach. Maybe he's happy being a coordinator. If not, this is his chance because of the stats. You look at the transformation of the Tennessee defense during the Tim Banks era. We're in the 4th season of it, and it's progressively gotten better. Rodney Gardner has a lot to do with that. I mean, what he's done with the defensive line, just evaluating, recruiting, and developing players is a huge part of Tennessee's defensive success. But yeah, Tim Banks deserves a lot of credit, and this might be his year to go. If he's looking for a head coaching job, now would be the best time. You just look at, I think some of these coaches, when they're looking for coordinator, either offense or defense, I think a lot of them look at the stats. I mean, sure, all these guys are connected, but I remember when Steve Spurrier hired coordinators, maybe he wasn't as well connected with some assistant coaches as other head coaches are, but he did. He goes down to NCAA stats. And then, well, this guy's, look at that, how many yards they're allowing a game. He's looking for a defensive guy. So, yeah, I think Tennessee fans should be concerned. And however, Tennessee is willing to pay well for coaches. So I would assume Josh Heupel could get another good defensive coordinator. But we've talked about this before, that up-tempo offense might discourage some prospects.
John, if say you are Tim Banks and say your aspiration is to be a head coach, though, I think one of the mistakes many coaches make in college football today is they take bad jobs. And I mean, I think that if you're a good coach, you still need to wait for the right opportunity. So if you're Tim Banks, if the wrong job opens up, do you stay at Tennessee and wait for the right one, knowing that you may not have a defense as good going forward? Or do you go ahead and say, I got to take this chance on the wrong job, even though it could derail my career if I don't perform there.
Well, I think what Tim Banks might, one way he can look at it is, I've proved myself as a defensive coordinator. I want to get a head coaching payday. Might not be the best job, but I believe in myself. I believe I can build a program. And even if I fail, I can always go back to being a defensive coordinator, if not in college, in the NFL. So I think those are thoughts that would come to mind with him. But you're right. Some coaches take jobs where you're just not going to win. However, I don't think of Tim Banks as a high-profile guy as a coordinator. I'm not talking about how successful he's been. You notice how some guys are really good at self-promoting, particularly offensive coordinators, that they develop this reputation. They talk a lot to the media. They're accommodating to the media. And the next thing you know, these national college writers or college football writers are talking about when some opening comes up and you're looking at coordinators, they think about these guys that always returns their phone calls. I think that's a factor in it when you deal with the national college football writers and you get your name out there. This guy's a hot commodity as a coordinator. It has more to do with offensive coordinators, but it can work with defensive guys too. They develop a reputation. Some other guys who might have done just as well, who don't self-promote as much, might not be able to get some of those jobs.
We want to throw some jobs at you, John, and let's pretend for a second that you're Tim Banks' agent. Would you take this job? And I do want to address the 100-pound or 800-pound elephant in the room, and that is, unfortunately, African Americans typically don't get offered as good of jobs as Caucasian dudes. So I don't know if you took that into account, Caleb, when you put together this list, but let's get it rolling on 4 downs, because I would hate to see Tim Banks, who I think is an elite coach, take a job just because it's the only one offered. What should people do if they want to be a part of the program, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, Caleb, first down, what job could be open that Tim Banks could consider?
Coop here. First down.
What do you got?
All right, I'm going to start with a school that is in a location based on where Tim Banks is from and also where he's cut his teeth as a coach for a while, which is I think the Purdue job's going to open this year. Ryan Walters has done an absolutely abysmal job at that school. He's all but fired at 1-7. Do you take the Purdue job in Nowheresville, Indiana, in this era of college football? In the Big
Can I
Ten?
just say this real quickly? We're never going to have the American Football Coaches Association as a sponsor, thanks to Caleb Calhoun. He rips more coaches than John Adams does. He's the only person I've met there. I think Purdue would be a takeable job. Like, I think you can win there. What do you think, John? Oh, I think John may be buffering a little bit. John, we got you. It's the Purdue job that's scaring him away. Let's see if we can get John back on there. What do you think, Caleb? If you're Tim Banks, would you take that job?
The Purdue job, I think, would.
Yeah, you are too. Let's reconnect, John, and go ahead and Caleb, give me your thoughts on the Purdue job. I mean, to me, I would take that job.
I would take the Purdue job, but I only if I were an offensive coach. I don't think defensive coaching can win at Purdue. Remember, my rule with defensive coaching is it's based on the rules of defense. Is you have to have players to a certain degree, and so that's why I wouldn't take the Purdue job. I'd only take it if I were an offensive coach. I don't think a defensive coach should take the Purdue job.
John?
I don't think Purdue would offer Tim Banks a job. I think you got a real problem at Purdue right now. Not only is Purdue bad, as Caleb subtly pointed out, it's also in a state where Notre Dame is in the running for the college football playoff, and Indiana has risen to power in college football, something not many people saw coming. So I think if Purdue's looking for a coach, if it can't get a name guy, it needs to get a guy with a flashy resume that can be entertaining. Caleb pointed this out. I agree. You need an offensive coordinator for that job, an offensive guy rather for that job.
But if you're Tim Banks, and I agree with what both of y'all said. But if you're Tim Banks and the Purdue job was offered, you take it. That's a Power 5 job, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Cooper Mays here, second down.
What school's next, Caleb?
All right, so we got an old friend down in Florida. You know, Alex Golish is coaching at USF. Gus Malzahn is on the serious hot seat at UCF right now. And it's not like UCF hasn't had success with Heupel himself. Would they go hire Tim Banks? And if they would, guys, I'm telling you right now, if I were offered the UCF job, I think that's the best job to take if you're an up-and-coming coach. It's one of the easiest places to win at its level.
Can't prove that by Gus Malzahn. I would, if I were
still coaching from like a platform, didn't he do that for a while?
Do
like
what, Dave?
He had hip surgery or something, and he was coaching from like a platform. It's a very odd situation. Go ahead.
Does that qualify as dumb coaching? I mean, aren't you risking your health?
No, he was hurt.
Well, no, but I mean, he could further injure himself by doing that. Okay. Yeah, Tim Banks definitely should take the UCF job if offered, but I don't think UCF's offering him.
I'm shooting a little high, John. I don't think Tim Banks should take
You are shooting.
I don't think, like,
way
for instance,
high.
the Temple job is going to come open. I'm just assuming you never take the Temple job. That's a bad job. Like, you should never, ever go coach there, honestly.
Yes, there's a platform, John. Do you see his little platform that he got to coach from?
Yeah, that's great.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, third down.
Who's next, Caleb?
Okay, what about this one? Since John's just shooting down all of my good ideas.
Well, I mean, I can go along with the program. If you want me to, I'll go along with the program. Whatever you ask. I mean, I'm
because, like, okay, I'm just gonna throw.
Yeah, Jerry Jones comes calling. Should he take the Cowboys job?
Well,
John?
okay, I'm good. Okay, what about this? Let me go more John's speed real quick for what John expects to be offered to Tim Banks.
Yeah, I think Caleb just called you slow.
No, I'm saying the level. Okay.
All right, give me what you got.
All right, lower level, John. UAB. I actually think UAB is an underrated job, and I think Trent Dilfer's gone after this year. He hasn't succeeded there at all.
Who could have ever predicted that would go awry?
Would you take if you're Tim Banks, is UAB a good job as a stepping stone to build your resume, and would you take it?
I think that's the best one he's come up with, John. And yes, I would take that. I think that is a good job.
If I were Tim Banks, I'd be looking hard at MAC jobs. But
Really?
UAB's probably along the. Yeah, I don't think he can. I think you're aiming way too high, but that's fine. It's
UAB
it's
is too
program.
high?
It's not. No, not UAB. Not UAB. I mean your other choices. I mean UCF and Purdue. That's unrealistic. Yeah, he probably could get the UAB job. After what Trent Dilfer's done, Dave could get the UAB job.
But would you
bank on it? Dave could get the UAB job. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
You were going to say, Caleb?
Okay, so John, do you think that as a lower level program, UAB is the type of school you could actually have success at their level?
How many UAB coaches have gone on to really good jobs?
None that I can think of, but they actually had a really, really good coach for a while who just retired, and Bill Clark.
He stayed there. Yeah, he stayed there.
Yeah, I'm pretty convinced had he gotten hired somewhere else, he would have been a good coach.
Okay.
But
well,
yes,
I think we need to be thinking about like UTC level.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, fourth down.
Kent State looking for a coach. Nobody figures out the golden flashes like
Don't
Tim
take
Banks.
the Kent State job. Do not take the Kent State.
Kent State job.
Yes.
No, give me a real one, John. Or Caleb.
Okay, so since John is shooting all of mine down, I know he's going to shoot this one down too. But
wait a minute, Caleb. I didn't shoot down the UAB job. He should take that job if offered to him, and I think he could get the job. So that's fine. That was a good selection on your part. Way to go, attaboy.
I feel so patronized. All right, let's take the.
No, not at all.
Let's shoot a little ambitious here. Okay, I'm gonna go a little ambitious again because
Notre Dame. Go ahead.
Notre Dame. I mean, guys, Marcus Freeman was as qualified for the Notre Dame job as Tim Banks would be.
I won't argue with that, but that was a weird circumstance where he just happened to be like standing around like Jay Leonard and Conan O'Brien.
What about this TCU? They might ditch Sonny Dykes after this year.
No, he would have no shot at that job.
Okay, can I just throw a few more out to see what John would think?
But he would take it. He would take it if offered it. Yes.
Okay, so what about this? A few other hot seat coaching names, and I think these are a little more realistic. Let's talk about the Temple job. That's going to come open probably. He has Pennsylvania ties. Would you take the Temple job?
Hell no. I mean, was he going to coach basketball there? Because I wasn't really even that aware that Temple had a football team.
Yeah, it does, Dave. It's done really well at times. I'm kidding. Yeah, if that's offered, he should take it. You're in a populated area. You should be able to maybe get some good players in there and improve the program.
I will say this. No, hold on. Caleb does a great job of putting the show together, but he's gotten beat by two people on the message board. Lance says Clark Lee is probably going to get a better job offer with his success at Vandy and maybe even after this year. Banks to Vandy. G. White says Banks will go to Colorado after Dion leaves Colorado. What about those two jobs, John?
He's not getting a Colorado job.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
then yours are as bad as Caleb's message
Okay,
board.
well, what about this last one real quick? Mike McIntyre is going to get fired by FIU. Probably. Would you take the Florida International job?
Do you know where Florida International is?
I
It's
don't.
near Miami. It's South Florida.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's in Miami.
It's in Miami? I thought it was near. It's in Miami.
Okay,
So that's
what
a
would be
sleeping
near?
giant.
Like the Everglades? You're like battling alligators on your way to work. No,
your recruiting trip consists of battling alligators.
Yeah. Here they come
Besides
again.
that, Caleb, you got to remember this: with global warming, that probably isn't going to be above water in the next 6 months.
So what? The athletes are amazing. I mean,
Yeah,
the
I would take that job. I would take that job if I were Tim Banks. I think that is a really good opportunity and a chance to do better. I think that was good research on your part too, Caleb, for coming up with that one.
Well, I mean, thinking about it, you're right, because like Lane Kiffin resurrected his career going to Florida Atlantic, and I feel like Florida International is like you could definitely you could win there. There's a lot of talent, so
I think you should be able to recruit internationally there too.
Yes.
Why even try to recruit
You've got
internationally?
two airports. You've got the Fort Lauderdale airport and the Miami airport. It's easy to get in and out. All right. Would you like to win this Dylan Sampson autographed mini helmet thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures? Well, all you have to do is be a paid member of Hooker's Corner. John's on Hooker's Corner. That's right. There's always John's on Hooker's Corner. All you have to do is click on that QR code and you will be well taken care of with increased recruiting information and more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. Just $9.98 a month. We'll be giving away the Dylan Sampson autographed helmet on October 31st, which will be Thursday for Halloween, as Caleb has agreed to dress up like Britney Spears in her prime. We look forward to that. Also, if you want to be a free member of Hooker's Corner, again, that QR code is there, and you can be eligible for a Garmin watch that we'll give away when we hit that 8,000 subscriber mark right around the corner. And that's brought to you by our good friends at Rick Terry. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. rickterryjewelry.com. And Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. It's right there. The link right down below. With John Adams, Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Give us 2 minutes. And then while Pat Summitt may have been the most impactful hire in the history of college sports from a coaching level, stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports. Give me 2 minutes.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Kids call it range. Yeah, we can joke around and have a good time. We'll do so when we make fun of college football coaches here momentarily. But I wanted to touch base on John Adams's column, John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center, about Pat Summitt. And Pat Summitt hired 50 years ago. John, would it be this month, this year, the date?
Well, it was before the season, but I think it was maybe December 7th when she coached her first game at Tennessee, which she lost. I think it might have been to Mercer. Yeah, but it was 50 years ago when she started her program, the Lady Vols basketball program, and she was just a year or two older, a few years older than her players. She was in her early 20s.
Incredible story. And I will just ask you this broad scope question. Where is women's basketball right now without Pat Summitt? Because it's getting views. Even the WNBA that we've made fun of before, John, is getting views. And obviously college basketball has been something for at least half of those 50 years since she was hired. But she was the primary driver behind that. Would you agree?
Yeah, she was. She did it And she was mindful of that. She wasn't just trying to promote her sport. She was trying to promote, the not just Tennessee basketball, but women's basketball overall. So she did have a huge impact on that. I think it would be interesting if she had not contracted early onset dementia. She would still be coaching now. There's not a doubt in my mind. She would have probably coached till she's in her late 70s or longer. And I think she would have been even better in this era because of name, image, and likeness, and because of transfers. She would have pulled in players. I mean, she had connections all over the country. She's got $25,000 to speak to corporations. So who wouldn't have wanted to align themselves with Pat Summitt and her brand and have her brand as part of your brand? So I think you would have invested in her. People would have invested in her. NIL money would have been invested in her program. So she would have maintained a dynasty. The dynasty would have actually been enhanced. I think she would have won several more national titles.
That's a great point. Caleb?
John, do you think part of what about from an X's and O's standpoint? Do you think Pat Summitt would have embraced, because she was all about defense and rebounding and pounding it inside, do you think she would have embraced the level of spacing that has almost become required today in women's basketball if you're going to win?
Yeah, I think she would have embraced whatever she needed to embrace to be successful. I think she was that kind of coach. She changed as the game evolved. She wasn't as much of a taskmaster in her final seasons as she was in her first. I mean, she used but in terms of, I didn't think of her as being, say, as good of an offensive coach as Gino Auriemma at UConn is. I think he's a preeminent offensive coach in women's basketball. But I think she would have adjusted. What she would have done is she would have brought in so much talent, and she did that with her unbeaten national championship team '98. That team was just so talented. It was ahead of its time in terms of women's college basketball. So much talent on it. Two of the greatest women players in Chamique Hoseclaw and Tamika Catchings. And that team was very good offensively as well as defensively. So I see what your point is. The game has evolved, but she would evolve with it. And the thing is, I don't think anybody in this era, in the NIL era, with Tennessee resources, had some of the personality and her ability to market, promote, her ability with media relations. I think she would have been at the very top again.
I want to, I'm not trying to be doctor who diagnoses people or anything like that, but I mean, there are great stories out and research out about how an excess level of stress and overwork can lead to early onset dementia when you're doing it in your 20s. And I know that when Pat Summitt, I've read stories, John, I know you were covering them in the 80s, where she went way beyond the regular work that coaches are supposed to do when they run a program in her 20s. And what I'm talking about, I mean, they didn't have a team manager. She washed the jerseys for the players a lot of times. How overworked would you say Pat Summitt was when she was taking over the program, trying to build it in the 70s and the 80s?
Well, yeah, I'm sure she was very overworked because, as you pointed out, she was doing everything. And if that's a factor, a lot of people, if that's a factor in contracting dementia, a lot of people, type A personalities who are driven to succeed, who don't sleep much, who work really hard, who are stressed out a lot. Maybe, yeah, you could say that. But see, also there's some people that thrive on that. And I think she thrived on it. I don't think she was stressed. There's a difference in working a lot of hours and being stressed. I don't think she was ever stressed because she was so into what she was doing. She so enjoyed what she was doing. And I've been around her. I guess 1999, I accompanied her and her team on a European tour. It was a tough job for me, traveling through Europe and writing a column at the end of each day with no real deadline, and staying in really nice hotels and eating really expensive food. Probably somebody got laid off because of that junket, but that's not my concern. I had a job to do, and I did it as best I could. But I just remember Pat was so good at multitasking. And even in the heat of battle, I just never thought of her as being stressed. I just thought of her thriving on that kind of work. And yeah, she did work a lot of hours, but she really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Caleb, I'm not sure how much interaction you had with her, but I like to share this one story, is just how kind of smooth she was, John. Yes, when she walked into a room, it was intimidating. I don't care if you were man, woman, whatever. It was like she had a presence. But she also, we were doing a show called the New Sentinel Sports Page. It was pretty successful. And Mike Griffith and I were doing a show together, and she was recording some stuff for the Vol Network. And I just said, "Oh, hey, Pat, would you care to jump in here and join us for a second?" Let's forget about the fact that Mike Griffith completely stumbled over every word and was scared to death of Pat Summitt. But let's focus on the fact that she just took it in stride, and she bounced on the radio, did an extra interview, and promoted her program. It probably took, walking in and out of the studio, the 10-minute interview took her 11 minutes, but that added to what she had to think about and do that day. And she handled it and just with perfect grace and stride. It was like it was nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would have been very stressed, very anxious being interviewed by you based on your reputation, Dave. But I don't think she would have been. I'm kidding. But she was you're right, Dave. She was very smooth. That came easily to her. She was so good with people. And that's one of the things I wrote about. When you were in her presence and you were talking to her one-on-one, nothing else existed. She wasn't thinking about some kind of some recruit she had to talk to that day. She wasn't thinking about a game plan. She was always very much in the presence, and that had a lot to do with her success.
Yeah, it was interesting watching her do the individual television shots. John, I'm sure you remember this. After practice, you give the real stuff to kind of the real journalist, and then you go to the TV people. And really, they could have all done it in a group setting, but she would go to each individual one so they could get their mic flag up there. But she thought it was that important. And I just always thought that the way she locked in and did those 90 seconds or however long it was like, sure, she said the same thing, but it sounded like it was the first time you heard it.
I know that's the talent. But again, the main thing is anybody that met her and talked to her was blown away. She remembered conversations, she remembered names. But one of the reasons she was able to do that so easily was because she was in the present. She wasn't thinking about something else while she was doing that.
And I will offer this up too, that my wife has met every football coach that's been at Tennessee. Well, not the recent Dodo Birds, but most every football coach that's been at Tennessee, and basketball coach as well. And she only stumbled over her words with Pat Summitt of all the coaches she met. I was like,
Did she get to meet Philip Fulmer?
Yeah, I think she took a couple phone calls from Philip Fulmer at one point. So
that's great.
That's a whole different story for another day. All right, let's change gears a little bit. As I remind you, portions of the program are brought to you by Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from garden family recipes. 5 locations to choose from, and they also have the fantastic 6-to-1 Brazilian cocoa, energy booster, premix instant white coffee, golden label coffee bag. The Lim Dynasty is in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can order at asiacafe.org. Again, asiacafe.org. Also want to thank our friends at Chattanooga Mortgage. Your home search just got easier. They can help you with your credit. They'll help me with mine. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. Chat with 2 T's, mortgage.com. All right, time for the last look. And on a Tuesday, that means John Adams as we go a little bit of coaching IQ. Too bad we can't do the NFL and NFL players. John, did you happen to see that Chicago Bear defensive back that's having a give and take with the fans while a Hail Mary, or is they're calling it Hail Maryland now, was thrown over his head? Now, in all fairness, he did tip the ball, but still, that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, but he said he'd learn from that. That's great.
All right. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Coaching IQ. What do we got, Caleb?
Well, guys, there were a lot of buys this week, so I kind of broke my own rule for a minute, which is that my typical football IQ is you have to make a dumb decision that without that I can specifically point to that it costs your team the game. This time, there were a couple of decisions that were so stupid that they may not have cost their team the game, but I still have to mention them for my fifth one. So, and it's 2 SEC coaches real quick. So, it's Brent Venables and Mark Stoops. Now, they both lost their games by 2 scores, but I don't know if you guys saw over the weekend, Oklahoma was trailing Auburn by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Still a game, by the way. It's 4th and 3. They're on about the 40-yard line. Their own 40, I get it, but it's 4th and 3, 9 minutes to go. Brent Venables takes a timeout because he doesn't know if he wants to go for it or punt it. And he chooses to punt it. Down by 2 scores.
You suck, you jackass.
I will actually say this, John. I'm not sure that it isn't in Brent Venables' best decision-making process to take time. Maybe take a timeout from time to time. Maybe he should be awarded more timeouts because his lack of ability to make cognitive decisions.
Brent Venables, I was already, I did a column. It's actually an SEC newsletter I do, and I sent it out. I was talking about coaches who would begin next season, begin next season on the hot seat. And I put Brent Venables on there. Easy pick. Mm-hmm. But the way things are going, I'm not sure that he's going to make it to next season. I mean, Caleb points out that, that doesn't help him. His offensive acumen is just kind of like, huh? It's and one of the people on our board would just pointed out that Brent Venables has actually made it tougher for other defensive coordinators to get head coaching jobs. I mean, I've never seen a situation where you lose your top 5 receivers to injury. I've never heard of anything like that.
No, but it is funny. It is funny how he set back the defensive coordinator position for at least a decade, kind of a la John Chavis.
Venables is a terrific defensive coordinator. Nobody's ever doubted that, but you have to score a point every now and then. And the way
can't play field position when.
Yeah, that was horrendous, and I really think, Caleb. I mean, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but just as a recommendation, I think you should widen your net when looking for really stupid coaches' decisions. Even when a coach wins a game, if he's made a really dumb decision, I think you need to bring that out. I don't care if he won the game. The stupidity will manifest itself in losses later on down the road. So I think you need to widen the net there.
Yeah, well, John, you could have me go cover Powell High School. Matt Lowe's there.
John, I just haven't had to widen the net yet because it's been so easy to find. I can narrow my list and I can still find coaches making stupid decisions. My Mark Stoops one, by the way, was the fact that he switched quarterbacks. I don't mind that, but he had a running quarterback. And they decided to throw it like 60% of the time in the second half. And I'm like, you got a running quarterback. You can't throw the ball to save your life. And it's a defensive game. Why are you throwing it so much?
Well, I'll tell you this too. I thought what was dumb about that is the change. And then they didn't have, because I've gone back and watched that game, they didn't have something immediately easy to complete, John. The poor kid goes, what's his name? Gavin Wimslet or something. He goes 0 for 4 in his first 4 passes, you got to have something easy, a screen or a little dump off. Last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com. Simply the best.
All right, who's next, Caleb Calhoun?
All right, so we got the 4 meaty ones now, the good ones. So we start with Michigan State head coach Jonathan Smith. Y'all all watched Michigan's offense this year, right? Pretty bad, right?
Yes.
I watch a lot of college football, Caleb, but I have not watched 1 minute of Michigan State.
No, Michigan's offense. Michigan's offense.
Oh, I thought you said Michigan State.
It's Michigan State played Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan State played Michigan.
Okay.
So
great.
Oh, yeah, I've watched Michigan. Yeah, they have a really
Yeah.
good offense too. Sarcasm.
yeah, terrible offense. You know what you don't do when you're facing a team with a really bad offense? You don't try to surprise them with an onside kick at some point and give them good field position. But Jonathan
that's
Smith,
what Josh Heupel does.
He's made Caleb's list before.
He's made my list before. But you don't do it when you're locked in a defensive battle. Michigan State and Michigan were in a defensive battle over the weekend. Michigan State hits a field goal. They decide, hey, I'm going to do an onside kick. They won't be expecting that. And, of course, Michigan recovers. Now, they don't score on that drive, but because of the field position battle, 2 drives later, they go score a touchdown and win the game 24-17.
You suck. Yeah.
And so does Caleb's impersonation of Jonathan Smith. I've seen him interviewed before, but I don't remember his talking exactly like that.
That's my dumb voice for people who think they're being smart.
Oh, okay. Well, that works then. It's a generic thing. I was individualizing it. Okay.
Yeah.
You're good.
It's like my wife's voice for me that does not sound like me at all, but she just has to make me sound dumb and like deepen the voice. I'm like, Jordan, that's not what I sound like, but you know.
My best impression is of John Adams, actually. It's in my repertoire. All right, Caleb, what's next?
All right, so next, guys, y'all, I'm really high on Mike Elko. I've always said, because coaches are by and large not bright. When you hire an Ivy Leaguer, a true Ivy Leaguer, they're light years ahead of everybody, and he's proven me right. But Bill O'Brien really throws salt on that theory, because he's an Ivy League grad too, and he ain't that bright. But then I realized over the weekend, Bill O'Brien went to Brown as a legacy kid. Legacy kids that go to Ivy League schools are not bright. They get in because daddy got him in, and that's Bill O'Brien. Over the weekend, Boston College was beating Louisville 20-7 at the half. Bill O'Brien, with 75 seconds left at the half, got the ball. It was 1:15 left. Boston College had the ball. All 3 timeouts. Bill O'Brien played for the half and ran out the clock. And then Louisville came back and won. You don't do that. You try to score.
Where was the ball at that time? Okay.
It was at the 25-yard line, but like you play for a field goal. You have all 3 timeouts. You've scored 20 points. You know Louisville with their offense is going to come back.
I agree with Caleb. I think that's, in this day and age of football, I think that's pretty short-sighted.
Well, it depends also on your quarterback. How good a passer is he? I know he's a really good runner. But I would have taken a shot. I think it's stupid, but it's not super stupid.
I think it's super stupid, but that's...
All right. Ray Varner Ford, local you trust, innovation you can't afford, rayvarnerford.com. All right, Caleb, what's next?
All right, I got a couple of golden ones to finish this off. We got Barry Odom made the list again, guys. Barry Odom did some great bad coaching over the weekend. But UNLV had a chance to upset Boise State. Boise State ran a play at the end of Barry Odom misused 3 timeouts in the game. At the end of the first half, Boise State ran a play. There was about 30 seconds left. If UNLV uses the timeout right there, a 4th down's coming, they'll get the ball with about 30 seconds left. Barry Odom's like, let Boise State run this clock all the way down so they can have the last play of the half, and then they score on the last play of the half on the 4th down.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And I was watching that game, and I thought about Caleb when it happened.
Well, did you see the second half where Barry Odom took a timeout to argue a substitution penalty that can't be reviewed? So UNLV burned a timeout in the second half on a substitution penalty that can't be reviewed. And then at the very end of the game, Boise State got a 1st down to run out the clock, but they would have had to run a play because Barry Odom forgot that within 2 minutes, the clock stops until the ref spots the ball, but the play clock is still running. Barry Odom didn't know that, so he just rushed to use his timeout, which allowed Boise State to kneel the ball down at the end.
Ouch. Not a great outing by Barry Odom, and not the first time I've ever said that.
That's hot.
All right, what else you got, Caleb? Wrap us up here.
Number one is Lance Leipold at Kansas. Kansas had a chance to upset Kansas State over the weekend, but late in the game, trailing 27, late in the game, I believe it was they were up 27-26, and they had a chance to really pile it on. They were running the ball well. They bring up a 3rd and 2 at the Kansas State 46-yard line, and Lance Leipold decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw it with Jalen Daniels, who hasn't thrown it well all game. Throws it, incomplete pass, and then at the Kansas State 46-yard line, locked in a shootout, decides I'm going to punt the ball. The punt ends up being a touchback, so he nets 27 yards out of that.
He was supposed to be a hot coaching. He was kind of a hot coach before this season, wasn't he?
That's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lance Leipold is that type of coach that does a lot of the not in-game stuff right, develops players, identifies talent, things like that. But then when it comes to making the right decision in the game and thinking on your feet, he's like, I don't know what to do. And so I think he's kind of that.
John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. John, thank you so